Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome back to my series of Star Wars reviews leading up to Mando and Grogu coming out. And today I am going to be talking about another divisive movie in the Star Wars franchise. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, starring Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Billy Dee Williams. The surviving resistance faces the First Order once again. This movie for the longest time was a comfort movie to me, where I can just put it on and have a good time, and I don't need to worry about the confusing storyline, even though that there is an obvious, very confusing storyline. I love how the movie starts out with Kylo just slaughtering these soldiers as he finds the Wayfinder and makes his way to this mysterious planet. In that place, there are multiple jars full of Snokes. And that leads to Palpatine again. I actually don't hate that choice, because he is already been the villain for the past two trilogies in the saga. And like, so why not bring him back? Like, come on. And also with that, I can't see why it's okay to bring back someone like Darth Maul when clearly it was the same thing with Palpatine. They both fell down these bloody shafts, and then the next time we see them, like, yeah, there's problems with them. Like, Darth Maul has broken legs, and Palpatine is old as hell and is attached to a bloody horror movie bloody skeleton thing. But it's like, if you can bring back Darth Maul, you can bring back Palpatine. Who cares? Like, if you're happy with, it's like the whole it's like the same argument I have with the whole Batman killing thing of Ben Affleck and Christian Bale. If you don't like Ben Affleck Batman killing, don't like Christian Bale killing people. But if you like Batman killing, like both. Like, it's not that hard. Like, people are just weird. Like, it's just one of those things. I don't mind that there's a million Star Destroyers. Why wouldn't, like, Palpatine have more Star Destroyers made? Like, come on. Like, that's stupid. Like, you think that there's only one ship? No. Like, is it silly that they come out of the water? Yes. But Star Wars has very silly moments in it. Just look at The Phantom Menace. There's tons of silly moments, like Jar Jar. And people now love that movie because of the silliness. I feel like they were trying to do the whole gang thing with Rey, Finn, and Poe to replace the Luke, Leia, and Han trio from the original trilogy. But even though I like the trio of Rey, Finn, and Poe, we haven't gotten a lot of moments with the three of them throughout the trilogy. Like, Poe and Rey only just met in the last few minutes of Last Jedi, and Rey hasn't seen Finn fully since The Force Awakens. It's just kind of jarring a little bit. You could say the same thing about the original trilogy, where Luke was mainly with Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, but there were still scenes of Han and Leia and Luke being in the movie together. Before Luke goes off and after, and when Luke comes back before the credits. So feels different. It's strange. I like how they still acknowledge that Rey and Kylo can still talk to each other through the Force. There are things that they forgot from the last movie, but I do like how they still do the ability of Rey and Kylo talking to each other through the Force. The thing about this movie is that it's Star Wars Endgame, where we see characters from the original trilogy and previous movies that we all know and love, like Lando. I like how we see him in this movie. Luke returning as a Force ghost is already really good. And Han Solo talking to Ben for a minute, like, which we'll get to that, because I have thoughts on those things as a whole. I don't think that they have portrayed Finn with the Force sensitive thing. Like, I don't think they've done that well. He is like, Ray, I need to tell you something. But the thing is that like people go like, oh, why Rey was going to tell her something, and she's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's not just that. There's a deeper meaning behind it. Yes, the film doesn't explain it well enough, but I've also watched videos on it. The thing with that is that Finn is trying to tell Rey that he's Force sensitive, but Poe doesn't believe in the Force. And we kind of see that through the movie. So he doesn't want it. That's why Finn waits for Poe to fall down in the quicksand, and that's why we get the Rey. I need to tell you something. And then when Rey mentions it later, going like, you were going to tell me something, and he was like, I'll tell you later. He says that because Poe is with them. So it's one of those things where you're like, where I can look at that and go like, yeah, I can see why people might have a complaint with this, but also it's one of those ones where I look at it, I'm like, I see what they were doing. That's just one of those things. I don't like how Poe is mean to C-3PO. That is a bit far-fetched for Poe, even after the last two movies. But I will say that this movie might be the funniest Star Wars movie because of those mean comments to Poe to C-3PO. Because there are a few that I'm like, that is funny. Now, a lot of people don't like the whole thing of Rey healing the snake and healing Kylo. But we've already introduced a Mando with Baby Yoda. They put it in that show because Season 1 came out before Rise of Skywalker. So, we see that and we're like, oh, that's cool, Baby Yoda can actually heal. And like, that show ended with a preview with a trailer for Rise of Skywalker. So, they were kind of putting that in the universe already, saying like, this already exists because this takes place after the original trilogy and before the sequels. But no, they put in The Mandalorian so we know that the whole healing with the Force already exists. So don't hate on this movie for putting it in there. Hate on Mandalorian. Don't hate on this movie. Now I love the scene of Rey like staring down at Kylo's ship, turning the lightsaber on and cutting the wing. That's just so cool. I'm like, oh my god, this is sick. While that's happening, the Resistance is kidnapping Chewie, and that leading to Rey and Kylo pushing and pulling the carrier, and that eventually leading to Rey accidentally using her lightning powers and explodes the carrier. It's like, no, Chewie bloody died! Like, when I first saw it in that theater, I was like, I'm sorry? You just blew up Chewie. That is bonkers. Okay. Let's talk about this. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I need to talk about it. Just so I remember it and I don't need to talk about it later. I do have lots of things to say about this movie because actually my rating will kind of shock you guys. So Rey being a Palpatine. In The Last Jedi, when Luke is teaching Rey the way of the Jedi, she taps into the dark side. You see that and you're like, oh, Rey is going to be related to someone that we don't expect. So that was something set up in the previous movies that wasn't just pulled out of left field for Rise of Skywalker. That was set up in the movies previous. So it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, I need to tell people how there's actually like, even though there are some things that they ignore about The Last Jedi, they don't completely ignore it because there's things in the trilogy that actually goes like that. I feel like JJ was actually like, yeah, you know what, this was good, let's use that and continue with it that way. So, and maybe one day I might do a breakdown of the little of the, oh my god, I forgot the guy who did I think it's Colin Trevorrow. But he did treatment for Rise of Skywalker that they didn't end up doing. So I might do a breakdown. or a review of that. Of like because apparently that one's more coherent to what we've actually seen in both Force Awakens and Last Jedi. So we'll kind of summarize that. We'll summarize that at some point. Now, BB-8 activating D-O is cool. I want a D-O. Like, he doesn't do a lot, but he actually speaks. It's like C-3PO, but he rolls like BB-8 because he's a white droid that rolls along the ground. That's very, very cool. I do like seeing C-3PO have a character arc in this movie. That is awesome. That is something that we don't get in Star Wars a lot of the times. And I do like the relationship between Poe and his old fling in this movie. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of them, but I do like how they show up for the final battle, which we'll talk about later. And I love Babu Frick. He's hilarious. I want a Babu Frick. Like, hey! That is just great. I love Babu Frick. And like, I mean, I know we're going kind of jumping ahead, which we'll get to my thoughts on the final battle, and individual sections of it a little later. But like the bit in the final battle where like Poe's like, who is that? And then she's like, take a guess, and then Babu Frick pops up and then she going, hey! That I was like, oh god. I cracked up. I was like, oh my god, that's hilarious. I love the scene where Rey is looking for the dagger and she sees Vader's old helmet, what we saw in Force Awakens. And then she fights Kylo Ren in that, like, force, the force ability that they're able to do because of Last Jedi. And so they fight and they break the stand that the Vader mask is on, and Kylo's like, I know where you are. It adds stakes to this movie that you're like, oh man, like, this is gonna be intense. The fact that General Hux is the spy was such a twist. Maybe it is a cheap twist. But if it got you in the theater, you can't say it's a bad twist. Because if it got you, then don't say it's a bad twist. Because a bad twist means that you could see it coming. A good twist means that you didn't see it coming. It's very... I know. It's very funny seeing that because he just hates... He just hates Kylo Ren so much. And he's like, I'm the spy. That was kind of funny to me. I do like that. This movie also carries on the relationship between Kylo and Rey from the previous movie. Not just by them connecting to each other over the Force, but also you can tell that Kylo wants to bring Rey to the dark side and Rey wants to bring Kylo to the light side. Like, they have that kind of conflicting relationship. Now, it's a bit silly that the dagger that they get, it's a bit Goonies, but like, it's one of those things where like, it's silly that it matches up to the original Death Star that's out in the ocean. You're like, this is like a video game campaign, like, come on. That's the one thing about this movie that I'm like, that is a bit silly, but anyway. When Rey goes inside the Death Star and you see the old Stormtrooper helmets and the damaged throne room is so cool. And that leads to Rey's vision of Dark Rey. That we would have gone if Rey took Kylo's hand in Last Jedi. That is so cool to me. Like, it is a dream, but I like seeing Dark Rey and what the consequences would have been from that if Rey went bad. And that leads into the fight with Ben and Rey on the remaining bits of the Death Star, which that fight scene with the water is such a good action scene. And it's kind of surprising how good a lot of the sequel fights are. They're underrated because people just go like, oh, the sequels are bad. But there's actually some pretty good fights. And then Leia reaches out to Ben and Rey stabs Ben. She regrets it because she actually feels Leia dying in that moment. So she knows that she needs to revive Ben. So that was a very powerful scene. I love that. And then later, we see everyone mourning Leia. Chewie goes off his tree and Ben is talking with Han. Now, let's talk about this, because this is one of those things that I like, because like it actually makes, not just makes Ben turn to the light side, but also people kind of misunderstand the messaging of this. Now, so Kylo talking to Han, that is not just a memory. That is Leia having her last reach out to Ben. So, like, you watch that and you're like, wow, that actually is really powerful, and like that is actually that's her calling out to Ben. And that actually works better than just like going like, oh, it's a flashback through memories. Which, like, the thing is like, I don't know how you would necessarily portray that differently. Because, like, I do agree that they didn't do a great job at portraying that to the audience of that's what it is. But I don't know how you would portray it differently, because you wouldn't go like, everyone mourning Leia, and like, you see, like, like, how I would have done it, but I know that the way that I would have done it would probably make people understand, but they also will complain, because they would complain about the way that I would have done it, because the way I would have done it is more kind of spiritual, like, if that makes sense. Because like the way that I would have done it was that you see everyone mourning Leia, like looking over the coffin. The body in the coffin kind of disappears. You see the sheet like lay down flat on the coffin or on the bed, and then you see almost like a pixie dust kind of thing go into the air, and then you see that like dust. Like, you see the shot of Ben looking out at the sea, and then you see the dust kind of going behind him, and then kind of forming into Han Solo. That's how I would have done it, but I feel like that people would have hated that even more, because Star Wars, even though that it's very science fiction, people like taking it as a really like serious thing. They don't like switching their brains off and like accepting what different filmmakers would take, because I would have done, because what I would have done would have been divisive the same way that Rian Johnson made a divisive Star Wars movie. But like, I would have gone hate, because like, I don't know how other than the way that they did it, I don't know a better way to portray that. So like, the way that I would have done it is more, I know, it seems more fairy tale-y, but like, also it's like, you guys suspend your disbelief, because like, you need to find a way that like, because you don't want the characters seeing the dust, seeing like the way that I would have done it. You don't want the characters like Mars and Rose and all of those guys seeing the dust. You just want the dust for the audience, and you won't see the dust forming into Han just for the audience, because otherwise you'll have people like this going like, oh, I don't understand why did they portray it that way? Couldn't you do it a different way? Like, you can, but I don't know how you would have done it. Like, if that makes sense. So anyway, and Rey ends up taking Kylo's ship and going exactly where Luke was in The Last Jedi, and doing exactly what he did, burning the ship, and where it even comes to the point where we have that great moment where she's burning the ship and she tries to throw the lightsaber in with the burning ship, and the Force Ghost catches the lightsaber, and we see Luke coming out of the bloody flames, and he's like, a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect. And Rey's like, Master Skywalker. Like, that kind of made me giggle a little bit because it reminded me of that scene in Revenge of the Sith when the little kid comes out to Anakin and like, he's like, Master Skywalker, there's too many of them, what are we going to do? Like, that can't remind me of that. So I was like, oh god, don't make me laugh, because I know that this is meant to be like a, oh god, it's Luke moment, but like, I know the way that, I don't think it's Daisy Ridley, I think it's just the script. The fact that they wrote for her to say, Master Skywalker, kind of made me giggle, because it's like, there's little references to things that they say, to connect it to the other movies, but it's one of those things where you're like, that one was a bit ridiculous to me, where it's like, I could just imagine Rey going up to Luke, going like, Master Skywalker, there's too many of them, what are we going to do? like that's kind of funny to me. I actually find that very, very funny. Where Luke catches the lightsaber because he throws it in Last Jedi, that is another reverse of expectations, where like, that was a cool reference without doing the same thing, except for throwing it, he actually catches it. So, that bit where he's like, I was wrong. We've seen that in movies. People just don't like that because they just didn't realise that there was a character arc in Luke in that movie, because Luke in that movie, we know that there was a character arc. There was a character arc of the, which the lesson is that he learnt in Last Jedi. Because we already knew that Luke kind of learned that lesson in Last Jedi anyway. So technically, it's not retconning Last Jedi. It's in there so Luke can basically tell the audience that that's the lesson he learnt. I was wrong. Because throughout that movie, we see Luke progressively going like, I was wrong. There needs to be more Jedis, and he actually becomes more similar to the old character of Luke Skywalker that we know from the original trilogy at the end of Last Jedi. So that was kind of one of those things where it's like, it's more telling the audience of what he learned. And during that scene, we learned that Luke was actually training Leia to be a Jedi. She was technically a Jedi. She just knew that the whole thing with Ben was going to happen, so she just gave her lightsaber back to Luke, saying her lightsaber will get picked up again one day by someone else. So that was actually, I actually really, really liked that. I think that was really cool explaining that. And it actually kind of explains the whole thing where like Leia using the Force to get back to the ship, because like, it's like, yeah, she's using the Force in a different way, but the Force thing, because Leia and Luke's mother fucked a Jedi, they both get the powers of the Force. So it's one of the things where you're like, I mean, it makes sense to me that they actually have the Force. And it makes sense with the prequels, it makes sense with the original trilogy now, because in the original trilogy we know that they're sisters, but it's like, how does Luke have the Force and like doesn't have like fully the Force, she's more Force sensitive, how does that work? But we actually see the prequels and how those two actually got the backstory from the prequels and stuff, and that actually really, really works. I like Luke lifting up the X-Wing, was awesome, because it's exactly how Yoda did in Empire Strikes Back, and Luke wanted to get taught how to do that, so the fact that he's doing it is cool. When Rey goes up against Palpatine is scary, because he is, like, we actually talked about earlier, but he's hooked up to this machine and this walker, and it's very, very creepy. Here's my thoughts on the final battle. I have lots of notes. This might be I might actually make a bit of a clip at this and do a separate video on it, because I do like what they were doing. I just think that they should have mixed some things in with it. I do like the final battle and how it's a mix between gunfight, ship fight, lightsaber fight. That's what the Star Wars is famous for, is those three different types of action scenes. The ships, the ship fights, the gun fights, the saber fights. And I love how we get that in this final battle. Now, I like when Palpatine shows Rey what the others are going through, and like, it's like, oh my god, we've lost hope. And like, the ships are falling down and stuff, and then like, Poe's going like, no, we've lost. And Poe is flying around the Death Star, and he hears Lando, and you see all these other ships with the instruments, with the Star Wars theme playing in the background, and Han and Chewie like go in frame with the Falcon, and yeah, that was great. That was such a Avengers Endgame Portals moment, which, yes, I do agree, Endgame did it better, but I'm a sucker for those moments, and it's one of those things where I'm like, I actually quite like that. I will say with Kylo, I do like the fight between him and the Knights of Ren, where they were setting up the Knights of Ren to be a huge threat across the trilogy, but Rey sends that lightsaber through the Force, and Ben has it. He goes by his back and he catches it, and he's like, well, bring it on. And he actually fights all of them. That was cool. I actually really like that. Okay, so I have thoughts on this. The voices. So, Rey, and this is at the point where Rey and Kylo were trying to defeat Palpatine. And Rey goes on the ground, and she is doing the whole, like, to the Force and to the jargon, like, be with me, be with me. And, like, we hear all the voices, like, we hear Anakin, we hear Mace Windu, we hear Yoda, we hear Ahsoka, we hear Alec Guinness Obi-Wan, we hear Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, we hear Luke, people from Rebels, Clone Wars. The thing is with that is, I think that's cool, but you don't know who it is until you're watching the subtitles. I want to actually, like, see them. Like, there's a cool, I don't know the YouTuber off my head, I'm so sorry, but there's a YouTuber out there that actually took that scene and implanted bits where the characters are just seen there. It's just close-up of everyone's face from all the previous movies in Star Wars, like in Clone Wars, Rebels, and the films. And like, even though it is a little silly seeing the like the animated Ahsoka with like the live-action Anakin and stuff, like, I feel like if you did that, like, because the way that guy did, he did it in a way where you still see the night sky, but you see, like, the clip through the sky type thing. And, like, if you did that, that would be actually be a cool way to see them. Like, they had the budget to get them back. They could have done that. But if they wanted to do the cheap way and just use previous footage, that's fine, and you can just have them on for a second while they're saying their line and flash them out and stuff. Like, I feel like that would have been cool, like, just seeing them, just while she's laying there, because they were marking this as the end of the Skywalker saga, and we have Luke, we have stuff with Luke, we have stuff with Han, we have stuff with Leia. We don't have any prequel stuff in this sequel trilogy. And if this was the end of the Skywalker saga, especially since the prequels were the last thing we had in terms of the saga, that's the thing that's like, okay, you need to have some of those people in there. You need to have Ewan in there. Ewan apparently did the voice of Rey in the first one, where Rey does the whole how do we put it, the like thing where the whole flashback thing where she touches Luke's lightsaber. You hear Ewan McGregor's voice, you hear Guinness saying there, but edited in a way that it actually says Rey. So like, you could have done that. But anyway, it would have been cool to actually see them. Another thing is when Rey takes out Palpatine, which is cool. I love that, and that was in my outro for the longest time, when she actually grabs the lightsaber and goes, and I have all the Jedi. And she does this to lightsabers. I think it's cool. What would have been cool, there's another YouTuber that actually did something. I'm like, that is something that you should have done. Because another complaint about Rey in the trilogy as a whole is that she's a Mary Sue, okay? Too powerful. What you do is that because Jedis that are more experienced than her can be more powerful. So what you can do is that you can still have Rey on the lightsabers doing this, but the thing is that you do basically the Force Ghost. You need to have Anakin in there, Hayden. Have Hayden because there's no point having the older guy from the original cut because the special editions are now the definitive version of Star Wars. But have Hayden in there as Force Ghost Anakin. Have Luke in there as what I like to call Old Man Luke. Force Ghost Yoda. Have Alec Guinness Force Ghosts. There's got to be more Force Ghosts. But if you have those ones, if you have the ones that we've seen in the films, that would have been cool, and that would have been a way that's actually explaining why, as opposed to people going like, how come Rey's that powerful? How can she take up Palpatine? But that's a way that you explain it. You have like all the Force Ghosts actually helping her push the lightning to Palpatine and eventually killing him. That's the way to do it. Kylo bring back Rey to life. I did like that, but I don't like how basically it sucks the life out of him because as soon as she comes back to life, it's like, Ben! They kiss and then he flops over. So it's one of those things where you're like, really? Come on, that's silly. I like seeing the image of Poe's X-Wing, Poe and Rey's X-Wing flying beside the Falcon. It's such a cool image to meet up with the other ships. And then seeing the Ewoks looking at the ships going back to the base. Like, that was cool. I actually really like seeing the Ewoks. Even though I'm not a big Ewoks person, I did actually like seeing them. And Mars giving Chewie the medal because he didn't get the medal in A New Hope was also cool. That was a very neat thing for fans. And Rey going to Tatooine and putting Luke and Leia's lightsabers in the ground, almost like that Obi-Wan did with his and Anakin's in the Kenobi show. That was very, very cool. Seeing Luke and Leia in the sky, I love seeing her say that she's a Skywalker. I love that because like it's one of those things where like people don't like how she's now a Skywalker, which is weird because like my thing with that is that why would you want to remind people that you are related to one of the most evil people in the galaxy is my thing. Like, why would you go up to someone and go like, I'm Rey Palpatine? Like, as soon as you say Palpatine, well, people will run off in terror. So, like, they need to obviously make her a Skywalker. Like, yes, she's not officially a Skywalker. I do agree she's not actually a Skywalker, but that's like if someone got married and they broke up because something happened, so they broke up, and then that girl got remarried. Does she still need to be does she still need to have the last name from the previous marriage? It's the same thing. Like, why would you keep the name from your previous marriage when you're with someone else? You would obviously need to change your last name. So it's just kind of one of those things where you're like, it's the same thing. I mean, it's silly. But I like seeing the throwback to the original trilogy, to A New Hope, where BB-8 and Leia are actually looking at the twin suns, and that was very, very cool. I'm hoping that the Rey movies are still being made because I love her character and I want them to bring back this cast of characters because they are some of the best characters that Disney has introduced. People only hate them because the movies that they were in, they did not like. Not because the characters themselves were bad. I'm going to give The Rise of Skywalker 5 out of 5 stars. I don't know what to tell you guys. I love this movie. It's a nice wrap up to the Skywalker saga. And I find a lot of meaning in it. And it is a comfort movie for me. I have a lot of fun watching the characters that I love. And the risks that this trilogy takes, I actually don't mind. I not hold on to the nostalgia of the original trilogy, even though I love them now. and obviously these movies can't touch the original trilogy. Like, as a whole, the original trilogy works better as a consistency. But I like the new things that this trilogy did. But I think they did the best that they could with this movie, given the past two movies. So, guys, next review, we're up to Mando and Grogu. So, guys, please hit the like button down below if you haven't already. Hit subscribe, press the little bell icon to get notified of future videos I make. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye.
Subscribe to my channel and also press this bell icon.